Hey, this is Andy Brown, and we are starting with our S3 follow-alongs. We got a lot here to do. It's such an important service. Just want to remind people that we're going to try to stay away from ClickOps as much as we can. We're going to use ClickOps as a means to look into the services and understand the feature set there, but we're going to try to focus on using the CLI, the SDK, infrastructure as code, all those things, because those are the things that are going to really matter when you work in the industry. The exam, depending on which one you're taking, they do care about this stuff to different degrees, but they're not going to test that so much to speak. So we're going to make sure that we do put a large emphasis on that programmatic part, because I know it is such a issue for people that get certified and then they don't have that other component. So anyway, we'll get started here and we'll make our way over to S3. So we'll go to the S3 console by going to the top here, typing search and clicking on the S3 service. This is a global service, so buckets are deployed in particular regions, but it's always going to say global up here. So when we create our bucket, that's when we're going to determine what region it's going to live in. So what we'll do is just go through a very basic practice of creating a bucket, throwing an object in there, and then we'll do it programmatically. And from then, after that, when we get the programming down and all the different variations, we'll then go look at the expanded feature set of S3. And there's a lot here in S3. So we'll go ahead and create a bucket here. And we have our bucket name. Now, the most important thing is that these buckets need to have very unique names because they're in a global namespace. Think of them like domain names. They also have strict naming rules, not as bad as Azure, but there are things that you just cannot do. You cannot put underscores in the bucket name. You cannot do capitals in the bucket name. So I'm going to name this something. So this will be, my example bucket AB for my initials, Andrew Brown. But yeah, if whatever you type in here doesn't work, just put something in until it works. Down below, we can choose our region. So, North Virginia is fine. I'm in Canada, so I would like to go ahead and do that. Notice that some regions are disabled. It's possible that you can enable regions somewhere in the AWS console. That would probably be in a separate video. So we will choose whatever appropriate region is near you. If you're in North America, choose East US, or if you're on the West Coast, choose West. If you're in Europe, choose Europe ones. Choose what's relevant to you. So we'll go ahead and move on to object ownership. So here it's talking about ACLs. ACLs is one way of accessing S3. We'll definitely have a separate follow along for this. We're going to leave those disabled. We have our block public access setting for this bucket. This is always turned on by default. When we want to do particular things like work with ACLs or bucket policies or allow people to access the bucket anonymously from the internet, we'll have to disable that, but we're going to leave it blocked for now because we don't need to worry about that. We have bucket versioning. So here we can enable our bucket versioning to keep track of files. We can apply tags. We have our encryption levels. Make note that it is set to SSE S3, so server-side encryption S3 by default. This is a managed type of encryption that AWS provides for you. Notice that you cannot turn it off. That could be an exam question, so just remember that. Now, in the past, was there ever an option to have it off? I can't remember. It's been so long, but at least we know now it's on by default, so that's great. Then we have bucket key. So using the S3 bucket key for SSE KMS reduces encryption costs by lowering the calls to AWS KMS. So they're just saying that they probably have a existing one that you can use for KMS. We'll talk about KMS later on. That is its own thing, and it's pretty large. We can do object locking. So this gives us write once, read many. We've covered this in the lecture content. We'll come back to that later on. We don't need any of these fancy settings. If this is the future and the UI has changed, well, just work your way through it. Unfortunately, AWS likes to change their UIs often on me. So that's just how it is. But we'll go ahead and create this bucket. And so now we have this bucket. It's called My Example Bucket AB. You can see I have a bunch of buckets because this is an active account. And I'm going to go ahead and type in My Example Bucket AB. And we'll just click back here for a moment and just make note of the region, make note of what access it has, when it was created. We'll click into the bucket. And so now we have this options across the top. For some reason, AWS has shuffled the options here so many times, but you just have to get used to finding where they are. They used to all be on one single page, which was really nice. Now they're broken up in tabs, and then they kept resorting them around. But anyway, here we're on our objects tab, and so this is where we're able to upload objects, create folders. So the thing with S3 is that all the files are stored flatly. So when they say folders, they're not like real folders. They're basically prefixes to the buckets. And it's important to remember that, because if you just know that they're not real folders, they're not going to act in the same way as you would expect when interacting with them programmatically. Down below, we have a lot of actions that we can perform, but we should first get a object in here. So I'm going to go out to the internet and get a graphic. I'll be back in just a moment, okay? All right, so I have a image on my desktop that we can utilize here. And we can actually, I think, drag files right into here. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and click the upload button here. And notice we can drag and drop our files. Actually, I think before you used to be able to drag right into here. I think they might have gotten rid of that. Nope, it looks like you still can. But we'll click in here anyway. And you can see that you can drag into this area as well. We could manually add files. I have a folder on my or just my desktop. It's not a folder necessarily, but I have this image here that says 00. It's me from one of my bootcamp photos. I'm just going to go ahead and rename it. We'll just say Andrew Brown. Cool. And again, just get whatever image that you want to use yourself. I'm going to go ahead and drag on this image into this area here, and it should add it down below. So the idea is we're queuing up what we're going to add in, and then we're going to go ahead and upload them. So this is really great when you want to add a bunch of stuff in place. Notice that it's telling you what sizes you're allowed to upload. So to upload a file larger than 160 gigabytes, use the CLI, SDK, or the Amazon S3 REST API. I remember that being a smaller value before. Maybe it's larger now. I don't know. They're always changing things on me. But let's go down below and expand the destination details. So here, there are some things that we can do. It's just reminding us that there's no bucket versioning on, that it's our encryption version, and we don't have object lock. The reason it's telling us this is because when you put an object into S3, sometimes the initial state will be different when you upload it the first time and you don't have these things on, and then you turn these on later on. So this might indicate to you, oh, I really want these to be on because the object isn't going to act the way I think it's going to act in the future when I turn these on later on. So here it's suggesting you turn on bucket versioning. I don't want to do that right now. Even though it's recommended, it does have some drawbacks in terms of how you work with S3, so we'll leave that alone. Down below, we have permissions. So this bucket has the bucket owner enforced setting applied for object ownership. So that means that we're the owner, which is fine. We'll learn later on in a follow along that we can have someone else pay for our usage. Then down below, we have our storage class. So here we can change the storage class of I guess it's at the object level. I would think that this is at the bucket level, but anyway, you can see that we have some options that we can change here. Oh, no, it's fixed. Okay, so I was concerned. I thought it was letting us change it at an object level because I remembered, oh, maybe I guess you can. We'll come back to this and look at this in more detail because that's a big topic. But in practice, most people just set it to standard. We'll go down below. We have our encryption option. So this should be at the object level. Do not specify an encryption key, specify an encryption key. So we could do that there on that object or objects we're uploading. We can do checksums. So that's just to ensure the data integrity here. So apparently we can turn that on or off. And apparently we can choose its function and some other stuff. So that is really cool. We can apply tagging to the objects. And then we have metadata. Metadata is something we'll definitely cover. And it's different from tagging. It's a very useful thing to have. We'll go ahead and hit upload. All right, and so we have Andrew Brown, cool, JPG. Now, I know S3 looks a lot like something like Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox, but the thing is it's more low level than that, and you're not going to get a lot of the things that you would normally get with those tools. So like once you have something, at least right now, once you have something here, you can't really move them around easily. So like if I have this bucket here and I make a folder, let's go ahead and make a new folder here. We'll just say images and go ahead and create this folder. Notice that it's not I can't like drag this on over here. Now, could I move it? This was not an option before, but we can go ahead and try this right now. So I can go ahead and say bucket and we can browse S3. But look how much work it is to move. It's not like simple drag and drop. We can go here and we can choose images here and say choose destination. And we'll go ahead and hit move. Okay. And then we'll go back over to here, to our S3 bucket. And we can see that we've moved it. But, you know, previously it was really, really hard to move stuff. You would have to do things programmatically. It's a little bit easier, but again, it's not like drag and drop. But it is much better than S3 years and years ago here. We can go here and rename our objects. We can edit the storage class. So I guess it is, yeah, so storage class is at the object level. So if we wanted to go here, we can change it. And I could change it to something else like standard IA. So hold on here before we do that. Minimum storage duration, 30 days. Per object fees apply for objects greater than 128 kilobytes. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just change that into the standard IA. Okay, so that's been moved over. And then we can go back and take a look and observe it. So yeah, storage class is at the object level, so that's important to note there. I can go back here and we can change it again. And we'll say storage class. This creates a copy of the object with the updated settings in the new last modification date. You can change the storage class without making a new copy. So I guess the question is it going to make a copy? What's it going to do when we move it back there? We'll go ahead and do that. So in practicality, you don't really need to change, again, storage classes too often, but of course the exam wants you to know, because if you're working at scale, there could be a case where you like that. So you can see it's pretty straightforward. We can go ahead and also delete this here. So we'll go and just delete it. And we'll just type in permanent delete because that's how you delete things. Every service kind of does it a little bit different. They might say put the word permanent delete in, put the name of the object in. It varies, but that's the way S3 likes to do it currently. Let's go ahead and open up Cloud Shell. So that's up here in the top right corner. Cloud Shell is going to allow us to utilize the AWS CLI. So we'll just go ahead and let that load. It runs Linux Bash, so that is the environment's running. I can't remember if it lets you run PowerShell. It might. The reason I'm confused is because when you go over to Azure, it also has a Cloud Shell and you can toggle between them. So I usually expect there to be similar feature sets here, but anyway, we'll find out here in just a moment. But anyway, so this is now spun up, and so we can go and start interacting with S3 using the CLI. So there are two different ways to interact with S3. There's the S3 API, and there's just the S3 commands. And this is not that uncommon. If you go over to like Google Cloud, they will have a separate utility called gsutil for Google Cloud Storage utility, and then you can use the usual gcloud commands. I think Azure has something similar, and the reason why is that you have these higher level, simpler operations that you can do with the standard CLI, and then they have the specialized ones so that you can do more low level operations. I don't know which one came first, but you'll just see people alternating between them, and they work a little bit different. So let's go take a look first at the AWS S3 one. So AWS, of course, is how you use the command or use the CLI, and then the second thing is the command. And then you have your subcommand. So I want to see all the parameters here. I'm going to go ahead and just type in help and see if that produces it for us. So it does not know that flag, which is totally fine. When we're using the AWS CLI, we can have it go into this auto prompt mode, which will give us more information. And that's the way I like to work with it. I never remember what the flag is, but we'll go ahead and take a look what it is. So we'll type in AWS, we'll type in AWS CLI auto prompt. The nice thing about Azure is that you can create a like a CLI type of file in Visual Studio Code, and it can give you a lot of information. But AWS's approach is to have this auto prompt and have everything built into the CLI tool, which is cool as well. It's just a different way to do it. So we can provide the command line option once, but I want this set every single time. So I'm just going to look for where that is. We'll go configure auto prompt, and I want to set this with environment variable. So we'll go over here, and it's this. So it's AWS CLI auto prompt. So I'll go back over here, and we'll type in AWS CLI auto prompt. Now, Cloud Shell might not remember this, so you might see me in many videos setting this every single time we want to use it. So it's not that big of a deal, but we'll have to do that. AWS CLI auto prompt. So we'll say auto prompt. And for this, I want it on completely. Sometimes you want it on partial. It's a little bit less annoying if you know the command. We'll do on partial, actually. That just means like if you don't complete the command or the command is wrong, that it will bring you into the prompt. So we'll do this, and we'll just put an export in front of it that will set this environment variable. To make sure that it is set, we're going to type in env. This will list out all our environment variables, but we can do env pipe grep, and then just type in AWS underscore CLI. And we can see that it's set to on partial. If this is spelled wrong, it won't work. If you spell it wrong, you can go up. And I'm just hitting up on the keyboard to bring back the previous commands, and you can change that stuff out. So we'll go ahead and type in clear. And now if we type in AWS S3, it should now open that auto prompt. And there we go. So there are other options here. We can look up documentation and stuff like that. It doesn't really work very well in Cloud Shell, and it doesn't really work well in cloud developer environments. But when you have it installed on your local machine, it works really, really good. But you can see right away we have S3, so high-level S3 commands. And then we have S3 API, so simple storage service, which doesn't really best describe what's going on there, but that's more low-level commands. Then there's S3 control. I'm not exactly sure what that is. We can go take a look there and just take a look at those commands because I'm not really sure. And it actually has very similar stuff there, so I'm not exactly sure why there's a third one, but we'll go take a look quickly. Again, AWS is always changing. It's very important to go take a look when you see something you're not sure. So this says provides access to Amazon S3 control plane actions. Okay, and maybe it has something to do with access points. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll go down and look at create bucket because this looks like the same stuff that we're going to be looking at. So go here and creates a new outpost bucket. Okay, so maybe this has to do with outposts. An outpost, if you're not familiar with, is AWS Outposts. And we cover this somewhere in the course. It's basically AWS that sits in your data center. So they have a rack here, and it's running those services locally there, but we'll go back. So we'll ignore S3 control, and we'll take a look here at first S3. And so we have a few actions. We have LS, which stands for list. We have website, so obviously for doing static website stuff. CP for copy, MV for move, RM for remove, sync for syncing multiple files, MB make bucket, I would imagine, and then RB would be remove bucket, and then pre-signed would be for pre-signed URLs. Is there more stuff? There could be. No, that's all that's showing up here right now. If we're not sure what commands there are, we can always look up at the AWS command CLI. I just go to Google, I just type in AWS CLI here, like this. And I usually want the reference documentation here, command reference. And then I click AWS here in the top left corner, and I try to make sure I'm on the latest version, because often, I clicked up here instead, often there's like a version 1, version 2, and Google likes to always show us version 1. But I'm going to go take a look here for S3, and we'll click into here, and it's not prompting for number 2, so we must be using the latest CLI command. And if we scroll on down here, we should start to see the commands. So yeah, here they all are. So I think we saw all of them there. I just wasn't sure if there were some off screen here, so I wanted to confirm it. But we can go take a look and see what these commands do. So probably the first thing we want to do is upload something here. So we can go to our copy command. It says copies a local file or S3 object to another location, locally or on S3. And here we have all of our flags, of course. And the easiest way is to go over to the examples and take a look of a simple example. So we have AWS S3 CP test.txt, and then we have this bucket URL, okay? And notice it has a special protocol in the front there. For whatever reason, AWS created their own like URL protocol, and so this is a short way of pointing specifically to that bucket, and you're going to be using that quite a bit there. So we're going to go ahead and try to copy a file. Now we are in Cloud Shell, so we have to try to upload a file here or create a file, which is not that hard to do. But yeah, we'll just do that here in a second. All right, sorry, I'm back. I was just making a couple extra slides because I thought there were some good things we could add there to the course. But anyway, so here is the general command. It's not too difficult to remember after you've done it a few times, but we'll go ahead and type in CP. And well, actually, before we do that, we need to make sure that we actually have a file to copy. So I'm just going to hit enter. We'll type in clear. And if I type in ls, there's nothing here. Could we upload files to here? Probably. We can upload a file this way. So I could go ahead and upload that. We could also just create a file as well, but I'll go ahead and upload a file. And I'm just going to go to my desktop here and upload Andrew Brown Cool. Now, I'm not sure how much you can store in Cloud Shell, so obviously don't go crazy here and just assume that these files are not permanent. At some point, they could get erased because Cloud Shell is not intended to be a permanent thing. It's just something that you can quickly utilize the AWS CLI and things like that. But we'll go ahead and type in AWS S3 and hit enter. And so that will enter us into this prompt mode here. Also, you know what's interesting? It says S3 control and then you have S3 outpost. So still not 100% sure, but obviously S3 control is not what we want to use. All right, so I went out to the internet and there is, this post here in the AWS CLI. And so, for me, I recall that, at least I recall that in the past that there was never an output option for AWS S3LS and you had to use S3 API. And so people are saying the same thing. Here they're showing that S3 API works with output JSON and then down below it doesn't work. And so the confusion is why is it documented? Because if we go here, you can see 26 likes. It says output is not supported. Why is it documented then? And I think that is a large frustration there that a lot of people have. And so, you can't always go by the documentation or the learning materials. You have to test things out and see what's going on here. And so this is one of those examples where, that doesn't work. Okay, so we just have to know that this just doesn't work and we're not crazy. So I just wanted to make that point there. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and type in clear. And what we can do is go ahead and remove that file. So that's what we'll do next here, okay? All right, so yeah, we want to go ahead and remove that object there. Now I do have to point out that before you can delete a bucket, and I'm not going to actually delete it here, but I'll just show you what it looks like when you try to delete a bucket with files in it, is that S3 is going to say, hey, you got to empty that bucket first. So if we just look for that bucket here, there we go, that's our bucket. We'll go ahead and hit delete. Notice it says the bucket is not empty. Buckets must empty before they can delete. To delete all objects in the bucket, you go to the empty bucket configuration and then prompt it. So we can easily empty this bucket here via the ClickOps, but let's go ahead and look via the CLI. We'll go back to our commands here. We're going to go to our RM, our remove command. And there are a few things here. We have a dry run. We can tell it to not give us output. We can do it recursively. We probably want to recursively delete. Let's go to the bottom here. We'll have to delete one file, but here we can just say recursive. It'll delete basically the entire contents of the bucket, or it should. The following remove command recursively deletes all objects under a specified bucket and prefix. So if we provide nothing, it should go under everything. Prefixes don't matter, so if we do delete that one file, we can remove the bucket, but let's go ahead and actually try to delete the bucket first before we remove the file and see what happens in terms of the CLI at least. So say AWS S3, and we'll give it a space here, and I'm going to type in RB for remove bucket, and we're going to specify this bucket. So we'll say my example bucket AB and hit enter. It says remove bucket failed. When calling the delete bucket operation, the bucket you tried to delete is not empty. Also, just make a note that, well, maybe not in this case, but a lot of times the CLI action names will reflect the permissions. It doesn't in this case. It's not called delete bucket. It's called RB. But for most other CLI commands, they are pretty much the same. But we'll point that out later on. This is just not a good use case, I suppose. But anyway, we'll go ahead and type in AWS S3 remove, and we know what bucket we want it to be. We'll go ahead and type in my example bucket AB, and then we'll just say recursive, if you can spell it. Sometimes they have shorter flags. I'm not sure if they have that for this one. So if we go up here, sometimes they show it somewhere here. If we type in recursive. Does this have a short flag? No. So you have to always specify the full flag name there, which is fine. And so this should delete the contents of that bucket. So delete those two files. We can go and confirm that by hitting up, and we'll do an ls. If your up doesn't work, it's because you were doing it inside of the auto prompt tool. We'll go ahead and type in ls. The contents of the bucket is empty. Now we can go ahead and delete this bucket. So we'll go AWS S3 RB for remove bucket, and then we'll specify the bucket name here. Good. And so now we can do AWS S3 ls. And we shouldn't see that bucket there anymore. It looks like it is gone. So that was really good. If we wanted to filter out for a particular bucket, we could do that using the query command, but we'll look at that when we have another bucket here. So what I want to do now is take a look at the other AWS S3 commands. Of course, we didn't do every single one here. We didn't do remove bucket. Sorry, make bucket. That's pretty straightforward. Make bucket. Pre-sign, we'll do that later on. Website is a different story. But let's go take a look at the AWS S3 API. And so right away, we're starting to see more options. These ones are more reflective in terms of what the name of the permissions are. So notice it said like you could not take that delete bucket action. And so now it says delete bucket as opposed to those shorter forms there. But anyway, we have a lot more options, so this is a lot more robust. What's really interesting is that when you go to other providers like Google Cloud, it's usually the generic one, which has less, and for output. So one of the key differences between the S3 API and the AWS S3 is that the S3 API can do the output of JSON, but when you go over to Google Cloud, and you use the gsutil tool, it can't do JSON, and it's actually the primary gcloud commands that can do it. So that's a little bit backwards, but of course they're different providers. But you can see there's a lot of different commands here. But often I'll use S3 API because it is more robust in terms of what you get back as output, which is that JSON, which we really, really like to have when we're doing things programmatically. But let's go take a look at S3 API down below. We'll click into it, and we have a lot of actions here. And some of them are repeated, of course. So, a bucket can have a lot of stuff attached to it. And so if it has cores, you can delete the cores, you can add the cores, all sorts of things. But let's go ahead and create ourselves a new bucket. So we'll go here, and we'll have a bunch of flags. So pretty similar flags, but we'll go ahead and try this. So say S3 API, create bucket, and I'm going to call this, we'll say bucket name here. We'll say my example bucket AB2. We could use the same name as before because it shouldn't be taken by anybody else, but just in case it is or there's a propagation issue, I'm just going to go ahead and use this flag. We might also want to provide some other information like the region it's going to be in. Now, we are in global right now, but this is going to default to whatever is the default here. This is based on whatever that region is. So if we go ahead, I'm just going to clear this out for a second and type in clear. If I type in env grep AWS, it might show us the default region, which is CA Central. So it is already going to deploy in that region because that environment variable is set. But if we want to override it, we can do that. And I'm going to go ahead and do that here. So we'll say my example bucket AB2. And this case, we have to provide the create bucket command. We can't just write it like that, and we'll have to say bucket here. And I think we can just put in region on the end here. I'll just say US East 1. So I'm not deploying in CA Central 1. I'm doing US East 1. Then there's, of course, a lot of other options, but I'm going to be fine with just that. So we'll go ahead and hit enter. And notice right away we get JSON back. So now we can work with JSON, which is a lot easier. We'll go ahead and type in AWS S3 API. I will say list buckets. I think that's the command. If we're not sure, we can, again, go hit enter here. And we'll just type in list buckets. In terms of what subcommands are named, they're not conventional across services. Each service team decides on a naming convention. Some of them follow what others do. Some of them just make up whatever they want. So just understand that it's not always the same, but it's great when they're the same name as the actual permissions command. So here we can see our list buckets. We're getting it back as JSON, so we can see some information there. One called bucket. I'm trying to find the one where it is for this my example bucket. We can go ahead and just filter that or query it. So I'm going to go ahead and type in AWS S3 again here. And we'll just say list buckets. And we either have a filter or a query. It doesn't look like we have a filter, but we probably, yeah, we do have a query. And so in query here, we can use the syntax to make this a little bit easier to read. So maybe I just want to see the name. So we'll type in buckets because this object here is wrapped in a JSON bucket. So we'll go there. And if we hit enter, now notice that it doesn't have the buckets. Now let's say we just want to get the name. So we'll go ahead and hit Q, hit up again, and we'll try that again. So we'll say list buckets, query buckets. And then I think we can do, is it this? Haven't done it in a while, so I don't remember. Is it that? No, that doesn't work. We'll try that again. You know, once you start using the CLI more, it becomes second nature. But if you haven't been using it in a few days, it becomes a little bit harder. So we'll say buckets. This is called, it's like JS path, I think. JS path query AWS. So it's whatever that syntax is. JSEM path. Here it is. Okay, great. So we'll go here. I want to go to the main website because it'll show me the syntax. And all I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to select it with the name. So I thought that we could just do that. Or we could just do .name on it, or square braces .name. Let's go try this out. Square braces .name. Oh, there we go. That's what it is, to get it with all the names. So that's a little bit easier to read, I would say. And then if we want to make it even easier, we could go ahead and type in AWS S3, list buckets, query buckets, name, and then we'd say output text. And that didn't work. There must have been an error here. We'll go back here, hit enter. Buckets. Oh, capital N. It's, I guess, case sensitive there. Output text. Okay. Not as nice as I'd like it to be, but at least it is in text. It just, I wish it was on new line. So maybe JSON is the better one. We could even say table. Table might be nicer. There we go. So now it's listing them in another format here. And let's say we just want to get that specific bucket. How would we do that? Let's go back over to JSEM path. Here it's saying question mark state equals whatever. We could try that, I suppose. Yeah, we'll try that. So we'll go back over to here. And I'll just try name question mark. I'm not sure if that's how you do the query, but sometimes we just look and we copy and paste. I know I made a video on this language somewhere, but you know, remembering every single day is a different story. So I'm going to say my example bucket AB2, because that's what I think we called it. And we'll go back like that. And it did not like that syntax. Probably because there's this here. That's not supposed to be there. Hit enter. No closing quotation. Go back over here. Oh, that's using singles, and we're using doubles. That might matter. Hit enter. And it's really not liking it there. Maybe we could try doubles around this one. Sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to fiddle with this a little bit, and we'll try singles here. There we go. And so now it's only listing exactly the bucket we want back. If we just want the name, we can just do .name on that, I think now. Like that. Okay, and then, we just want that text. We can just say output text. But query and filter are your friends. You really should learn how to use them. Or worst case, use something like ChatGPT to produce it and just get comfortable with being able to manipulate the JSON response because it's really useful. But we'll go back over to here into the CLI and we'll click back and we'll just look at list objects or buckets, sorry. And if we go down here, I'm just curious if we get any kind of different kinds of output besides JSON. I like YAML quite a bit. It does. You don't always get YAML. It's going to vary based on what you get here. But, if you like YAML, I love YAML. We'll say AWS S3 list buckets output YAML. And apparently I forgot to type something there. It's not liking it for some reason. AWS S3. We'll just hit, API list buckets, that's why. And then we'll say output YAML. There we go. And so that's kind of like in our YAML format there. Let's go back and type in AWS S3 API. Well, before we do that, no, we actually have a file we can upload. It's already locally here. I was thinking we could create a file, and we could do that actually. We'll do that right now. We'll say clear ls, and I'll say touch, and we'll say hello.txt. So that will create a text file. Should probably have 0 bytes. Let's go ahead and look at that. This has, where's the hello.txt? It's 0 bytes. So maybe we can go in that file and add something. If we want to add something, maybe we can use nano. I'll type nano, hello.txt, enter. And I'm just going to type something and say hello world to give it some data. And then down below, we want to quit this. So this, we want to save and quit. It should be Control S, I believe, Control S, and then Control X. There we go. Well, I'm going to hit up there, ls-la list long. And so now we have a bit of byte data in there. I think it's good to have that in there. And so I'm just going to make a new folder here to put those 2 files in. So we'll say make dir, so make a directory, a folder on Linux. And we'll just say images. I'm going to do move, mv. This is Linux commands, by the way. This is not AWS in particular, but you should know this stuff. I'm going to move that into the images folder. I'm going to move our hello.txt into the images folder. We'll do a clear. I'm going to do ls/images. And we can see we have our 2 files there. So we have 2 files there, and we might want to move them in bulk. We did talk about there is a sync command, so that's something that we could do. We could also probably move the files individually, which is not as fun, but we'll go ahead and do is type in AWS S3 API and see what options we have here. So we got copy object, but is there a sync in here? Let's go take a look. All the way back here. And that might be only in the other one, I'm not sure. Because again, the AWS S3 is high level and this one is low level, so it might not be doing batch stuff, but it can delete multiple objects, but can it copy multiple objects? We have create multi-part upload, copy object. I don't think it can do multiples, so that might be one distinction between this and the other one. We'll go here. Multiples. Let's just go down to examples and see what we have. Copy source, so, and it's changing the key name, which is kind of interesting. So I'm not seeing like a multi-copy option, so maybe that's what we would use the other one for. So let's go ahead and go back to S3 here. Instead of S3 API, we'll do sync. And so now what we can do is specify a local folder. So I'll say images, and then I'll type in S3:// my example bucket AB2. This is really confusing since we keep having this one here, so I'm just going to click off. So It's a little bit easier to see what we're doing. My bucket. Oh, okay. We didn't name it 2? I thought we named it 2. All right. Did we not name it 2? Oh, or maybe we didn't delete the old bucket? There it is. Okay. I think it's because when I clicked back, it was holding in what was ever in the browser there. So, that's why, again, I don't like the console. It can be very misleading, but we'll go ahead and put in 2 here. So the idea is it'll basically copy all those files into this folder. We'll hit enter and notice that it did that. So that's a really nice and convenient way to do that. The S3 API apparently does not have that functionality, which is totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and type in clear. One thing that we didn't do is we didn't download files. So that's something else that we could do. Let's go ahead and type in AWS S3 API. And we will do copy object. We'll say copy object. And this one might actually have flags for all the options. It might not have that shorthand that we saw in the other one. So we'll go all the way to the top here. And we'll look at what flags we have. There we go. So we have a lot of flags. So we have copy source if match, copy source if etc., content type. I mean, there sure is a lot of stuff. We'll say copy source. And we'll take a look at what that flag tells us what it will do. Specify the source object for the copy operation. Could we specify the actual S3 URI? It's not saying that here. Specify the source object for the copy operation. For objects not accessed through access points. No, we're not worried about that. For objects accessed through access points. Okay. And there's key here. The key of the destination object. Maybe there's copy object and there's download object. Let's go take a look. Maybe there's like a download option instead. Because they might be separate actions, whereas CP can, and the other one can go both ways. Which we didn't do, but we can go take a look at that in a moment. So do we have like download object? We also have put object, which is a little bit more normal. Do we have like a download option here? No. Let's look at put object. I guess copy might copy objects within the bucket, whereas put will actually put the buckets up in terms of the files. Yeah, that's probably the difference here. Let me just take a look here, okay? Oh, sorry, creates a copy of an object that is already in Amazon S3. Okay, great. So, just understand that when you're using AWS S3, the standard one, and it says CP, copy can also mean put object. That's the underlying one, or it could literally just copy an object in place. So that is a key distinction. So really, we're more interested in this put object here. Let's just go take a look at an example, as there's way too many flags. And I bet it can go both ways. So we have, this is S3 API, yeah. So we have put object, we specify the bucket, we specify the key. How do we download? Okay, so I'm not exactly sure with the the API. So let's go over here and we'll open up a new one. How do we download a file from S3 using the S3 API? Get object. Oh, of course. Of course, it's get object. So that's what we really wanted. All right. So what we'll do first is we will download a file. So get object. We'll specify the bucket. So that's going to be my example bucket AB2. And then we'll probably need to provide the key. So we'll say hello.txt. And then what else do we need? Out file. So that's going to be the name of the file that. Notice here that there's no flags in front of it, so we probably just put the name in front of here. So I'll just say hello2. We'll say world.txt here. We'll hit enter. Notice that it says it looks like it's downloaded. It shows the length of files. We'll type in ls-la, and we should have in here world.txt. So there it is. I'm going to use Nano to open it up, and we're going to go and change the text here. So I'm going to say hello world and put an exclamation mark on the end here. I'm going to do Control S Notice when I did Control S, it said wrote one line. I'll do Control X to exit that. And so now we know how to copy. Let's go ahead and use the put command. So we'll type in AWS S3 API put object, and we'll take a look there. So we have bucket, and we'll say my example bucket AB2, and then we'll say key, and we'll say world.txt, and we need to specify the actual object. So notice here it wants a body. We're not necessarily specifying a file. This is something that is really, really frustrating when you're working with the lower level API, because you have to kind of encode the the file or the content in order to pass it along. It's not necessarily specify the name of the file, and that is definitely something that is quite the challenge. Something we should set is content type. So here I'll set the content type as string or text. I think it's plain text. That's what it is. Yep. And if you don't set the content type, it's not going to know what the type of file it is. That can be an issue when you're working with websites. We'll find that issue out later when we do the static website hosting. But what we need to do is solve for body. This one's always really tricky. So what we'll do is go back to the CLI and see what we have as options. Oh, it looks like we can just specify the image. Okay, I wasn't 100% sure. I thought it would be a lot harder. Notice you can use the file protocol to specify the file, or it looks like you can not provide it there. But when you're working with the SDK, a lot of times you have to, you can't just pass a file along. It's quite painful. We'll go ahead and we'll try this. We'll say world.txt, and we will hit enter. And hopefully that uploads. So it looks like it did upload. We'll go here and refresh. We'll click into it. We have our world.txt. Notice it says the type of file it is. Again, if we don't specify the content type in this lower level one, it might not pick it up. It might not know what it is, which can be quite frustrating. Let's actually see if that happens if we were to create a new file. So I'm going to just say we'll say touch. We'll say index.html. And we have no contents in it whatsoever, but we'll go ahead and type in nano and go index.html. I'll just say my website. I'll do Control S to save. Notice it wrote the line. Control X to exit. And we will now go ahead and copy this similar line here and paste that in. And I'll say body index HTML. And we'll say index HTML here. Hit enter. And let's see if it picks up the content type. And it did. Okay, but I just want to point out that it doesn't always pick it up, and if you're using the SDK or something else, you might get different results. But at least there, it's been okay, so that's really good there. Let's go ahead and list objects. So we'll go ahead and say AWS S3 API, and we'll say list objects, and we'll see what other options we need to specify, probably bucket, and we'll say my example bucket AB2. We'll hit enter. And so notice that we are getting more of a big JSON format. Not the easiest way to look at this, but we might want to just look at the key here. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and hit up, and we'll try, does this have a filter? I'm not sure. Filters can be really useful. Filters happen server side, but they're not always available. Query definitely is here, so we'll go here and we want contents. So we'll try this, and we'll hit enter. Oh, we didn't specify bucket. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just copy this, paste it in down below, and we'll say bucket, my example bucket AB2, and we'll hit enter. And notice that we're getting contents back. We really want to select just this key. So what we learned last time was put square braces, and then we just put key like this. And notice that it's not putting the prefix in here. So, or I guess these aren't in folders. Okay, so I thought we uploaded this into a folder, did we not? We'll go back over here. Because we executed that sync command earlier, right? And I thought we specified an images folder. Maybe we did not. We could probably just hit up until we find that command. I think we executed it here. Or we just search. Can we search? No, we cannot search. So, you know, I don't remember, but I thought we had created that images folder, but let's go ahead and make a new folder. So in our objects here, we're not getting the new folder. Oh, it's right here. Sorry. I was looking at the wrong place. So we can go here and call it images and go down below and create the folder. And let's just move one of those files in there. So I'm just going to take I'll take the 2 text files. Or no, I'll just take the image because that makes the most sense. And we'll say action, copy, and we'll move that into our destination. So here, choose that destination and copy. The reason I want to do this is I want to see if the list objects will list the prefix as well. It should, but just in case it doesn't, let's find out. So to do AWS S3 list objects, and we'll type in, what were we going to type in? Oh, the bucket, right? So we'll type in bucket, and this will be my bucket example AB2. We'll hit enter. And we did something wrong here. Oh, it's S3 API. We'll hit enter. The specified bucket does not exist, so I must have typed the bucket name wrong. It's my example bucket, not my bucket example. We'll go ahead and type that in. Great, and let's clean that up. So we'll type in query, and we'll say contents, square braces, dot key, enter. Okay, and so notice that we are getting the prefix. It also shows the prefix folder, so this is not necessarily an object. Notice we said list objects, but we're getting this one in here. So, you know, you might need to filter that out. There could be a flag to get rid of folders. Let's go find out if that's the case. Go back here, list objects. There's also a version 2, so at some point they made improvements to it. So sometimes you want to use version 2, sometimes you want to use the original one. They look very similar. This one has a little bit more text. In terms of what I'm looking at, they kind of look the same, so I can't really tell the difference. But you know, when you start digging into it, then that's when it kind of matters. I'm looking at the flags to see if there's any particular difference. Nothing that's jumping out at me. I think this one actually has more flags. Maybe some of these CLI options, I'm not sure. Nope, they're there as well. So, you know, this one has a start after flag. That's probably one of the big differences here. To start listing from Amazon S3 starts listing after the specified key. That could be useful if you have a very, very large bucket. So not really seeing much of a difference there, but what I wanted to see here in the list objects was, is there a way to exclude the prefixes? And I don't think so, but we can set a delimiter, which is kind of nice. Okay. So anyway, that's that. So I would say I'm pretty satisfied with what we've done with the AWS S3 in terms of the CLI. I think next what we should do is open up some code and make some bash scripts so we have some reusability. Look at some SDK code, look at some infrastructure as code IAC. And then I feel like we've really rounded out our skill set here for basic operations for AWS S3, okay? So I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.